All right, so let's get into the pass game matchup. Now, this is a really intriguing one because when when I look at this and you look at their numbers, it is bad. I mean, their numbers are bad. But here's the rub. Here's the thing that's confusing. They actually have some pretty talented secondary players. When you watch this team play and you look at the way that their DBs move and just the athleticism and you get away from sort of the execution and how are they playing the game and things like that, you realize like, boy, this is a really talented football team. And you have a hard time kind of figuring out just exactly how they're so bad because their numbers are bad and they're trending in the wrong direction in a lot of these. Like we mentioned last week, Phil Dracovic completed 13 passes for 310 yards, 15.5 yards per attempt. The week before against Miami completed 22 passes for 389 yards, 11.4 yards per attempt. Just to give you an idea, if you're averaging about 9 yards per attempt, you're a really high powered offense. If you look at like Alabama last year, who had one of the most explosive passing games I've ever seen last year, they were at 11 yards per attempt, right? So, as I just pointed out, Boston College was at 15.5, Miami was at 11.4. Virginia Tech, who's not a good passing team, completed 15 passes for 254 yards, 10.2 yards per attempt. Virginia completed 29 passes for 396 yards per attempt. That's 9.2. Duke completed 22 passes for 292 yards, 10.1. And then Pitt completed 24 passes for 399 yards. Even North Carolina had success throwing the ball. They threw for 306 yards. They just didn't have as many big plays because they did a better job of pressuring the quarterback in that particular game. But man, I mean, they're giving up over 10 yards per attempt in their last 6 games. I mean, they're giving up big plays, and it's really it's just about I'd have to really dive into it more to realize, is it a technique thing, is it a scheme thing, specifically hone in what the problem is. But to me, as I watch film, as I watch Georgia Tech, it's just a unit that doesn't really understand how to execute the coverages that are being called. The reason I say that is because when you watch it, they have a long secondary, they have an athletic secondary, but what tends to happen is they just turn guys loose constantly. They remind me a lot of John Tenuta's defenses, and that's not a compliment. And so for example, look at the Virginia game. There were 2 times in that game in the first half where they just turned Dontavian Weeks just loose. I mean, how do you turn him loose? Well, both times it was something that required communication and discipline as a defense. The first time they brought a double boundary blitz. So they brought a linebacker off the edge and they brought a corner fire. So Brendan Armstrong catches it and just throws it to Dontavian Wicks real quick, and there's nobody over there. The safety comes over late and makes him miss, and he just runs in for a long touchdown. It was about as easy of a touchdown as you're going to get. Later in the game, they ran out of a trips formation, and they ran a guy up the right seam. They had, I think it was Wicks. He stutters and then goes up like on a kind of a wide fade, like they pump faked a little screen, and nobody covered him. It was like the play that Notre Dame gave up a touchdown against North Carolina. Clearly a blown coverage. Well, that stuff happens over and over and over against Virginia Tech. So when you're Notre Dame and you look at this matchup, you have to say, okay, we have better players than they do, but their issue isn't necessarily a talent issue. Brian Kelly alluded to this yesterday. So what you can't do in this matchup, in my opinion, is you can't just have it to where it's 4 verts, and your basic concepts, and you run those things, but you also need to be able to take advantage of why they're not good. And the reason they're not good is they do a lot of post snap, when teams that do a lot of post snap switches, things we've talked about, mesh concepts, high lows, where, one guy goes here, the other guy goes there. They kind of switch post snap responsibilities or post snap alignment, doing different motions, doing things to make them communicate. If you can make them communicate as much as possible pre and post snap, they have problems. They're going to turn guys loose. I think teams that run with some tempo, not breakneck speed, but teams that run with some tempo and do those things give them even more problems because, again, they just don't communicate well. They're not a very smart defense. They make a lot of assignment mistakes, a lot of coverage mistakes. They try to be aggressive, which kind of adds to that problem. So, to me, those are the things that I look at that I have to see. how is that being handled? Those are the things that I when I look at it, I wonder how is this matchup going to be. So that's going to be obviously part of the matchup right there as well. So this is definitely an area where Notre Dame needs to take full advantage of this matchup and exploit them in the pass game. That's why I say, yeah, you can run the ball on them, but you can really set up some fun stuff in the pass game and really attack them in the pass game if you want to have some fun with that.